One day, everything you depend on, your job, your status, the people who say your name with respect, can disappear, and the world will not pause to apologize. This is the story of a philosopher who lost everything in a single day, and the even stranger story of how that loss became the first honest piece of his life. As you follow him through that day, you will be invited to question what you really control, how you face fear and failure, and how you might find a quieter, steadier freedom in the middle of anxiety and uncertainty. His name was Elias. He was not famous, not a best-selling author, not a sage in robes. He was a university professor who taught ethics and ancient philosophy in a noisy modern city. He spent his days explaining Stoics and skeptics to students scrolling on their phones, and his nights answering emails and revising articles that almost no one would read twice. The day he lost everything began with an email. It was brief, painfully polite, and final. The university was making cuts. His department was being restructured. His position, the one he had poured 2 decades into, would not continue. There would be a small severance. There were apologies. There was, of course, nothing personal. The hard truth hit him with a dull, metallic clarity. The institution he had given his life to did not belong to him. It never had. It was not a home. It was a contract, and the contract had expired. He stared at the screen, waiting for emotion to arrive like a storm, anger, panic, a sense of injustice. Instead, something quieter came first, a single unwelcome recognition that he had spoken this truth to his students many times. Whatever can be taken from you, he had said in lectures, is not truly yours. The Stoics call it an external: job, income, reputation, health. Important, yes, but borrowed. The hypocrisy tasted bitter. It is one thing to analyze detachment in a classroom. It is another to watch your salary vanish in real time. He walked outside into the bright, indifferent morning. Cars moved, people argued into their phones, a child laughed at a pigeon. His personal catastrophe changed nothing in the rhythm of the street. The world did not echo his loss. It simply continued. Here, a first reversal waits for us, if we dare to look at it. We often believe that if we plan well, work hard, and behave decently, life owes us stability. We do not say it aloud, but we feel it. Elias had believed this too. Yet the core Stoic insight is ruthless. The universe is not a contract for our comfort. It is a field of events, unfolding according to causes too complex to trace, in which our control is narrow, almost embarrassingly small. If that sounds cold, look more carefully. The same insight that humbles us can also free us. When we stop demanding that the world cooperate with our preferences, we can finally ask a more urgent question. If so much is outside my control, what remains genuinely mine? As Elias walked, his phone vibrated again. A message from his landlord. The building had been sold. Leases would not be renewed. He had 90 days to leave the apartment where his books, his notes, his carefully ordered life lived with him in quiet stacks. Another loss. Another reminder that what we call mine often rests on someone else's decision, somewhere in an office he will never see. He felt the first real wave of fear then. Not philosophical fear, practical fear. How would he pay the new rent prices in the city without his position? Who would hire a middle-aged philosopher in a market fascinated by speed and novelty? The thoughts accelerated, and with them came the familiar tightness in the chest, the shallow breath, the rehearsed catastrophes of anxiety. This is where a deeper reflection begins. Anxiety is often our imagination turned against us. It is a mind rehearsing future pain, as if misery could be prevented by worrying about it early. The Stoics noticed this centuries ago. We suffer more from our thoughts about events than from the events themselves. Yet knowing this in theory is one thing. Living it on the street, with unpaid bills in your pocket, is another. Think of a moment when you refreshed your email every few minutes, waiting for an answer that would decide your future. A job, a medical result, a message from someone who might leave. Did your worry change the outcome? Or did it only exhaust you in advance? Elias stopped at a bench and sat down. He watched his own mind pulling him toward panic. He recognized the pull. He had described it to others in abstract terms. But today, there was no blackboard, no slow, confident explanation. There was only the choice in front of him, to follow the fear or to observe it. He took a slow breath and did something simple, almost embarrassingly small. He listed, in his head, the things still completely within his control at that moment. Where to place his attention. How to treat the people he would meet that day. Whether to lash out or to remain composed. Whether to greet this loss as pure injustice or as material for practice. The list was short, but it was real. Here the story turns again. We usually imagine strength as expansion, more money, more status, more options. But sometimes strength arrives as contraction, as the clear recognition of a smaller circle drawn honestly around what we can actually govern. In modern life, we are taught that freedom means endless choice. Thousands of products, dozens of career paths, infinite online voices. Yet this excess of choice often leaves us paralyzed and anxious, always fearing that a better life is occurring just outside our current selection. The Stoic sense of freedom is almost the reverse. It begins when we stop chasing control over distant things and accept the tiny, luminous territory of our own judgments, decisions, and responses. You may not be able to silence the difficult colleague, fix the economy, or heal a loved one's illness, but you can choose whether to respond with bitterness or with dignity, with complaint or with clarity. In that choice, as narrow as it is, your character takes shape. By midday, the losses multiplied. A publishing deal he had hoped for fell through. The editor's message cited market conditions, another impersonal force. A colleague who had once praised his work now sent a brief, chilly note, already distancing himself from a man who no longer held institutional power. And here another hard truth emerges. When your status falls, you discover which relationships were genuine and which were merely transactions conducted in flattering tones. It is painful, but it is a form of unwanted honesty. Elias ate alone in a small cafe, his mind moving between anger and a strange, tentative curiosity. If he really believed, as the Stoics did, that character matters more than circumstance, what did this day demand from him? Not as a victim, not as a disappointed employee, but as a practicing human being. He remembered a line he had once assigned to his students. Do not ask that events happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do happen, and your life will go smoothly. He had always softened it in discussion, afraid it would be misunderstood as passivity. Now, with his own plans collapsing, he felt its harder meaning. To wish an event to happen as it happens is to stop fighting reality with resentment and begin working with it as raw material. At this point in our own reflection, it may help to pause. If this journey resonates with you so far, you may find value in more explorations like this. If you wish, you can subscribe and stay close to these conversations, and share in the comments a moment when losing something opened a door you did not expect. Thoughtful stories from others can become quiet companions on our own path. Afternoon stretched into evening. Elias returned to his apartment and looked around as if he were seeing it for the first time. The crowded shelves, the notes taped to the walls, the carefully chosen furniture that had felt like extensions of his identity. Without his position, these objects seemed strangely weightless, as if their meaning had evaporated when the email arrived. Here the next reversal appears. We think our possessions, achievements, and roles anchor us. In reality, we often anchor ourselves to them, like someone tying a rope to a floating object and calling it land. When the object drifts, we drift with it. Consider your own life for a moment. The title on your business card, the number in your bank account, the admiration of certain people. These things can be good, even beautiful. But if your sense of worth leans too heavily on them, your peace will be as fragile as they are. Elias began to sort through his belongings. Not in a frenzy of minimalism, not as a grand gesture, but as a quiet act of honesty. Which books had truly shaped him? Which papers did he keep only because they proved he once impressed a committee? Which objects actually served his life, and which ones merely served his vanity or his fear? With each drawer opened, he encountered a question older than any university. What, if taken from me, would truly damage who I am? And what, if taken, would merely bruise my pride? This, too, is a question we can bring into our daily life. The next time something goes wrong, a failed project, a social embarrassment, a financial setback, ask yourself with severe kindness, has this event harmed my ability to be honest, to be just, to be courageous, to be thoughtful? Or has it only harmed an image of myself that I had grown attached to? The day ended not with resolution, but with a kind of exhausted clarity. Elias lay awake, listening to the faint noises of the building. Above him, a neighbor's television murmured. Outside, a siren passed. Inside, his thoughts slowed from loud complaint to a quieter observation. However much had been taken from him, time was still passing. Breath was still moving in and out. The basic fact of being alive, of being a conscious creature capable of choice, remained. He had lost his position. He had not yet lost his capacity to decide how to live without it. Let us call this the end of the first half of his day, the half in which loss seemed to define everything. What follows is the second half, where the same events, seen from a different angle, begin to reveal something else. When he woke, nothing external had improved. The emails were still real. The lease was still ending. His bank account had not miraculously grown in the night. But something subtle had shifted. The first shock had cooled, and in its place was a new kind of question, less desperate and more precise. If I cannot change what has happened, how can I change my relationship to it? This is another reversal we often resist. We are trained to look outward for solutions, new plans, new strategies, new negotiations. These can be necessary, but before any of them can truly help, there is a deeper inner work, the act of interpreting what has happened in a way that does not destroy us. The Stoics spoke of this with great simplicity. It is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things. At first, this sounds naive. Losing a job, a loved one, or a home clearly hurts. But the insight is not that events are painless. It is that the meaning we assign to them either multiplies or reduces that pain. Elias began, almost experimentally, to change the questions he was asking himself. Yesterday, he had silently repeated, "Why is this happening to me?" Now he tried a harder, more generative question. Given that this has happened, what kind of man do I wish to be in response? The difference is not cosmetic. Why me keeps us circling around blame. Who will I be now moves us, however slowly, toward responsibility. In our own lives, we can practice this shift in small, ordinary annoyances. A delayed flight, an unfair remark, a sudden bill. Instead of rehearsing outrage, we can ask, what opportunity, however small, is hidden in this inconvenience? Patience? Assertiveness? Letting go of an illusion of control? As the morning passed, Elias made a simple plan. He would reach out to a few people not to beg, but to inform. He would update his resume, not as an act of panic, but as a clear acknowledgement of reality. And he would keep a small promise to himself, to observe his thoughts as he did these things, and to gently challenge any story that framed him as a permanent victim. He was not pretending this was good news. Stoicism is not the art of calling poison a blessing. It is the discipline of refusing to drink a second poison in the form of self-pity and resentment. Around midday, he walked to the park near his apartment. He sat on a bench, notebook in hand, and did something he had often assigned to students but rarely practiced with full sincerity. He imagined, briefly, losing even more. His health, his remaining savings, the people he loved. This imaginative exercise, known historically as a kind of negative visualization, is not a morbid game. Properly used, it sharpens gratitude. When we consider the real possibility of deeper loss, what we do have, breath, movement, one more chance to speak honestly to someone we care about, suddenly glows with a quiet significance. In that moment, Elias realized that, even stripped of job and home, he still possessed an inner space no email could revoke. The space of his own mind, capable of understanding, choosing, and loving. This interior territory, cultivated or neglected, is what philosophers have long called the seat of freedom. Think of your own day. How much of your mental life is spent reacting to notifications, demands, and expectations? And how much is spent deliberately, in reflection, in choosing what truly matters to you? A life without inner space is crowded but empty. A life with inner space can endure external storms without collapsing. By late afternoon, nothing dramatic had occurred. No unexpected offer rescued him. No patron appeared. The transformation taking place was almost invisible from the outside. But internally, a new alignment was forming. He began to see that fear, failure, and pain were not interruptions of life's path. They were part of the path itself. Material with which to build the very character he had admired in the Stoics he once taught. Courage without risk is only comfort. Acceptance without loss is only theory. From the outside, Elias was now a man in an uncertain position, carrying a box of books down a city street, searching for a smaller apartment, updating a resume in a crowded cafe. From the inside, he was quietly training himself in an art. The art of meeting each moment without demanding that it be different before he would agree to live it. This does not mean surrendering to abuse or injustice. It means starting from the fact that, for this instant, reality is as it is, and that our first freedom is to choose our stance toward it. Night approached again. The day in which he had lost almost everything was ending. Standing by his window, looking out over the roofs, Elias felt something unexpected. Not joy, not relief, but a calm that did not depend on any new promise. He had not solved his future. But he had discovered that even when much is taken, something essential can remain untouched if we guard it. Our capacity for integrity, for clarity, for kindness. This, perhaps, is the quiet center of inner peace. It is not a guarantee that nothing more will be lost. It is the realization that, while life will continue to take, it cannot take from you the manner in which you will meet its takings, unless you hand that power over. As you step back from his story and into your own, you may find one question following you. If tomorrow were the day you lost what you lean on, what would you still have that no one could strip away? And perhaps, beneath that question, another, softer one waits. What would your life look like if you started to live as if that inner, untouchable part of you were already your true home?